Okay, this is Chapter 7, Part 5, The Rape of the Mind, The Psychology of Thought Control, Menticide, and Brainwashing by Tuesday M. Merleau, M.D. I'm looking absolutely demonic in this reverse video. The verbocracy and totalitarian thinking and the official verbosity of demagogues serve to disturb and suffocate the free minds of citizens. We can say that verbocracy turns them into what psychology calls symbols agnostics, people capable only of imitation, incapable of the inquisitive sense of objectivity and perspective that leads to questioning and understanding and to the formation of individual ideas and ideals. In other words, the individual citizen becomes a parrot, repeating ready-made slogans and propaganda catchwords without understanding what they really mean or what forces stand behind them. This parrotism may give the citizen of totalitaria a certain infantile emotional pleasure. However, Heil, duce, duce. These rhythmic chants afford him the same kind of sound enjoyment children achieve through babbling, shrieking, and yelling. The abuse of the word and the enshrinement of propaganda are most obvious in totalitaria than in any other part of the world, but this evil exists all over. We can find all too many examples of it in actual conversation. Many speakers use verbal showing off to cover an emptiness of thought, to stir up emotions, and to create admiration and adoration of what is essentially empty and valueless. Loud-mouthed phoniness threatens to become the ideal of our time. The semantic fog in totalitaria is thickened by the regimentation of information. The citizens of our mythical country have no access to sources of facts and opinions. They are not free to verify what they hear or read. They are the victims of their leaders' labelomania. Their judgments are determined by the official labels everything and everybody bears. I love all these words. Labelomania. The urge to attach too much meaning to the label of an object or institution and to look only casually at its intrinsic value is characteristic of our times and seems to be growing. I call this condition labelomania. It is the exaggerated respect for the scientific-sounding name, the label, the school, the degree, the diploma, with a surprising disregard for underlying value. All about us we see people chasing after fixed formulas, credits, marks, ranks, and labels because they believe that if one is to have prestige or recognition, these distinguishing marks are necessary. In order to obtain acceptance, people are prepared to undergo most impractical and stylized training and conditioning, not to mention expense, in special schools and institutions which promote certain labels, diplomas, and sophisticated facades. Not long ago, a psychiatric colleague worked in a clinic where a different terminology was used, and the ideas of his former teachers, because they were expressed in terms other than those of the clinic, were criticized and even vilified. My colleague was a good practical therapist, yet he came to need psychotherapy himself to counteract the utter confusion resulting from daily contacts with aggressive adepts of a different terminology, just as much as some of our soldiers released from the Korean prison camps. There is something essentially unpleasant in the need to express and judge all opinions and evaluations in accepted cliches and labels. It implies a devaluation of the work or of the idea involved, and it denies the subtle human differences between people and the phenomena their words describe. In totalitaria, man is so anxiety-ridden, so fearful of any deviation from the prescribed opinions and ways of thinking that he only allows himself to express himself in the terms his dictators provide. To the citizen of totalitaria, the acknowledged label becomes more important than the eternal variation that is life. As words lose their communicative function, they acquire more and more of a frightening regulatory and conditioning function. Official words must be believed and must be obeyed. Dissension and disagreement become both a physical and an emotional luxury. Vituperation and the power that lies behind it is the only sanctioned logic. Facts contrary to the official line are distorted and suppressed. Any form of mental compromise is treason. In totalitarian, there is no search for truth, only the enforced acceptance of the totalitarian dogmas and cliches. The most frightening thing of all is that the most frightening thing of all is that parallel to the increase of our means of communication, our mutual understanding has decreased. A Babel-like confusion has taken hold of political and non-political minds as a result of semantic disorder and too much verbal noise. The apostatic crime in totalitaria. Totalitaria makes the thinking man a criminal, for in our mythical country the citizen can be punished as much for wrong thinking as for wrongdoing. Because the watchful eyes of the secret police are everywhere, the critic of the regime is driven to conspiratorial methods if he wants to have even a safe conversation with those he wants to trust. What we used to call the Nazi gesture was a careful looking around before starting to talk to a friend. The criminal in totalitaria can be an accidental scapegoat used for release of official hostility. And there is often need for a scapegoat. From one day to the next, a citizen can become a hero or a villain, depending on strategic party needs. Nearly all of the mature ideals of mankind are crimes in totalitaria. Freedom and independence, compromise and objectivity, all of these are treasonable. In totalitaria, there is a new crime, the apostatic crime, which may be described as the obstinate refusal to admit imputed guilt. On the other hand, the hero in totalitaria is the converted sinner, the breast-beating, recanting traitor, the self-denouncing criminal, the informer, and the stool pigeon. The ordinary law-abiding citizen of totalitaria, far from being a hero, is potentially guilty of hundreds of crimes. He is a criminal if he is stubborn in defense of his own point of view. He is a criminal if he refuses to become confused. He is a criminal if he does not loudly and vigorously participate in all official acts. Reserve, silence, and ideological withdrawal are treasonable. He is a criminal if he doesn't look happy, for then he is guilty of what the Nazis called physiognomic insubordination. He can be a criminal by association or disassociation, by scapegoatism or by projection, by intention or by anticipation. He is a criminal if he refuses to become an informer. He can be tried and found guilty by every conceivable ism: cosmopolitanism, provincialism, deviationalism, mechanism, imperialism, nationalism, pacifism, militarism, objectivism, subjectivism, chauvinism, it should be egalitarianism, but it says equalitarianism, practicalism, idealism. He is guilty every time he is something. The only safe conduct pass for the citizen of totalitaria lies in the complete abdication of his mental integrity. Oh my God, I might be a criminal. Anyway, that ends chapter 7, my friends, and we will meet again in chapter 8. And we are nearly halfway through this book. Wow, nearly halfway through this book. Got some really interesting books lined up for us. So we're just going to move right along. I hope you're able to follow along without getting left behind. You can always back up, you can always, if you fall behind, don't worry. You can always get to these at your own pace. They'll be there for you. Alright? So, see you in chapter 8.